Do you ever wonder why you're doing what you do in life? Do you wish that you could be really happy and passionate about what you do? Or maybe you already are and you want to expand in a different direction. Hi, I'm Barbara Ann, host of What the Why? I love what I do. A lot of that has to do with my story, my journey to this point in life. And guess what? Everybody has a story. So please join me for conversations with leaders from all walks of life about what they do, and more importantly, why they do it, how they found their core purpose, their passion, their mission in life. And if you're looking for your own, maybe you'll get some great suggestions on how you too can find your why. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to What the Why, the podcast. If you've seen us before, you know that our first 3 seasons were an online streaming television show, but we've pivoted into a podcast because we believe in our 4th season as a podcast, we can reach a much broader audience. So whether or not you've seen us before, let's refresh you who we are. We feature conversations with diverse leaders from all walks of life about why they do what they do and how they figured things out. Whether you are sick and tired of feeling sick and tired, or whether you feel stuck and want to get unstuck in your company, job, or life. For the most part, our guests have something in common with you. Many of them felt similarly at some point in their life and decided to do something about it. And today is no exception. I'm super excited to have joining me for our very first episode of season 4 and our very first podcast version of What the Why, Dr. David Petrovay. And I am going to turn it over to him and let him introduce himself after this big round of applause for David Petrovay. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Well, Barbara Ann, thank you for having me on today. I look forward to whatever it is that comes out of our conversation that will help your listeners.
Now, as we get started, please, no one can talk about let me reframe that. I'm going to have you introduce yourself. Our old format is I used to read the dry bio. We're not going to do that anymore. What would you like us to know about who Dr. David Petrovay is?
Well, I think you summed it up in your introduction, Barbara Ann, with people who were stuck, had no idea what direction they were going in, and what it took to shake them up to make those changes. So I think that this is just perfect. And I'm also working on a book that is entitled The Stuck Paradigm. So stuck is something that is very familiar to many people in their lives, including myself. So just a brief description of who I am, where I guess it's really about where I began and what caused me to change direction from that. I was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in the shadow of the steel mills. And this would have been in the late 1940s. And at that time, really a lot of the career choices that people made were decided for them because generally you worked in the mills. And it was very easy to get into. It was hard labor. I had uncles and cousins who worked in that field, and I could have gone in that direction. But I realized that this was not the way that I wanted to go. So I went on to the university because of my intelligence, and I have to acknowledge that that certainly helped. And went to the university, did a 4-year degree in psychology. And people said, well, what are you going to do with psychology? That's not marketable. Well, what happened was I was given an opportunity to work on a master's degree in the education of the blind because they were looking for special ed teachers back then. There was a shortage. So I thought I could do this. So I finished a master's degree in record time. It was done in less than a year because they were so desperate to get teachers. So I did that for 34 years. I worked in the field of teaching the blind, working with them in a variety of positions. And during the later years of that, I went back and obtained a second master's degree in counseling. So that was something I'd always wanted to do because of my interest in people and what made them click. So then after that, it was what would be next for me. So they said, no, you can't get a third master's degree. You need to apply and get a doctorate. So I did that. And now that was not done in record time. In fact, they were going to give me an award for the longest amount of time to complete a doctorate. I think it was like 17 or 18 years to complete it, but I did. And I finished that in 2008. And at the same time, I ended my career working, that part of my career, working with the blind, and asked myself, what's next? And I'm sure many of your listeners have asked that question. If I end this portion of what I do, what would I do next? And then I went back to what my real love was, which was career counseling. And so I pursued that, worked in two different agencies for a short time, and then decided it's time to go out on my own. So since 2008, I've been in business for myself. And that's basically my story.
Wow, wow, wow. So that is incredible. And I disagree. You could have gotten a third master's. They just wanted to push you.
Probably could have, yes.
No, when you began that journey, a lot of times what we end up doing isn't necessarily what we thought we would do when we were really, really little. So, what did young child David Petrovay want to be when he grew up?
And we had this as part of our pre-podcast interview. And I asked if anyone had ever given this answer before, and you said no. My answer was rich. What do I want to be when I grow up? I want to be rich. Why? Because I didn't grow up where money was easily come by. And so we lived in scarcity. And I thought, I don't want to live that type of life. So, what would I do with all the money if I was rich? Well, think about all the organizations, agencies that would benefit from that money. I mean, I have a love of animals, so probably the Humane Society would receive quite a bit of it. I've been to Africa and seen what it's like on those reserves and how they're struggling to keep the species of certain animals alive. And that would be another area that I would want to contribute to. And then there are aspects of humanity that I would want to give large amounts of money to. Education for people who are more disadvantaged that certainly would qualify but don't have the funds to do it. So it would be setting up a scholarship fund. So that would be another area that I would want to donate my money for the environment, making sure that we have clean air, clean water. So it goes on and on. And I'd have, like, if I was a millionaire or even a billionaire, okay, I would have no problem at all distributing that money to people that I thought were worthy of it.
Wow. Which, in the times that we live in now, is much appreciated in terms of your values and your morals and your ideas. How many of those things that you wanted to do have you been able to move forward with without having to disclose whether or not you're a millionaire or billionaire or trillionaire?
Well, I found out, Barbara Ann, that it's not always about the money. It's about you have the desire, and the money will follow. That's what I'm finding out in my life. So, a number of years ago, I read a book by Jack Canfield called The Aladdin Factor. And he talked about having 101 wishes. So, I created a stack of index cards. Each one of them has one of the wishes written on it. And I will tell you, so many of those have already happened. I mean, that stack of what's already manifested has become thicker and thicker. So one of the places I wanted to visit was Antarctica Been there. One of the others was to visit the Hermitage in St. Petersburg. Been there. Okay. I mean, the list goes on and on. It was to write at least 2 books and have them published. Well, right now I'm working on books number 4 and 5. So that's happened. And just with all of these, it's not about, oh, when I accumulate enough money, then I will do this. It's like, I'll do this and the money will follow. And I've never gone into bankruptcy. I've never had those kinds of situations. There's always been enough money. And maybe that's what being financially successful is all about, having enough money to do the things that you really want to do in life. And I will tell you, several of these, I always have to let go of the how. Now, how is that going to happen? So with going to the Hermitage, originally we had a cruise plan to go to Alaska. That was not one of my wishes. So what happened was that the couple that we were supposed to go with, she couldn't get her passport. There was a technicality. So they said, sorry, we can't go with you to Alaska. We said, well, that's all right. We'll just go on our own. And the travel agent calls and said, hey, Alaska is a big ticket item. Would you want to replace that with going to the Baltic, including St. Petersburg?
Okay.
And it didn't cost us 1 extra penny.
Wow.
Okay, and we went business class. We did everything just right. And we were there, and when we went to the Hermitage, there were 2 options for what to do. One of them was, well, you could just go with a huge crowd and visit the Hermitage, or you could go to a special evening performance of a symphony, followed by a private tour of the Hermitage. I mean, how good is that? But that's pretty
Wow.
much how it's been. Just put out what it is that you want in life and let go of how it's going to show up for you, because
I
you'll
was
be
going to say,
surprised.
yeah, you're a walking example of what it means to manifest your
I
desires.
really am. And in fact, I have a whole book written on that. It's called Ponderings. And it talks about a daily entry for what you can learn about being positive in the world. And it always ends with a question to answer about the reading. And it's just fascinating because I do this with my co-author. We just pick a random reading, and whatever the reading is, Barbara Ann, it's always perfect for both of us. Whatever's going on in our lives. There are no accidents, okay?
Yeah.
Never.
Firmly agree. Totally, totally and completely agree. So, with that in mind, you work with people, like you said, this is the perfect platform, because what
Mm-hmm.
we do is we talk to people who the fear of change is still stronger than the fear of remaining the same. And that's something that you personally overcame. How did you find, for lack of better words, the courage or the inspiration to choose this road less traveled?
Oh, well, there was a pivotal point in my life when I was 29. Okay. Things were not going the way I wanted in my life. And I thought, there's just no future for me. And I'm going to be totally honest with your listeners. Okay. It became so bad that my only way of dealing with it was to be here in this life anymore.
Wow.
And people said, well, when you get that way, you know, how do you feel? I said, it's like this bottomless pit that you don't see yourself being able to get out from. And so, when I reached that point, and that was probably, what they call the dark night of the soul, that was it for me. And luckily, I was seeing someone professionally at the time, and I called him and said, this is what I'm considering doing. And he said, whatever you're planning to use, get rid of it now. Okay. And I did. And then the next day, he had me see him, and he gave me an alternative that really shook me up at the core. And I thought, this is where this was my calling card to change. If I didn't change then, it was nothing was going to get any better for me. And I think it was that point when we reached that bottom that we can then just garner up all the courage within us to say, you know what? I'm worth saving. I'm worth moving beyond where I am right now. And I don't know if your listeners have been there, but maybe at different levels they have. But it certainly has allowed me to be able to connect with people who may be feeling that way.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that you share that, because not only my listeners, but myself can relate to that. Everybody's got a story, and yours speaks to what's possible when you find that courage to keep going.
Yes.
So let's talk about, you're a published author. You went to Antarctica. You've done all of these amazing things that wouldn't have happened had you not decided to choose that other path.
That's right.
What would you say are some of the greatest learning opportunities that you've had along the way by finding that courage to move forward?
I think what I've learned along the way, Barbara Ann, is be willing to try. Be willing to just take advantage of opportunities. Now, you may try them once and decide, I did it, I won't do it again. Or, you know what? I really like this. And it's something that I would like to incorporate into my life on a regular basis. So that would be one, is being willing to try to take advantage of new opportunities. And the other one is you're never too old. When people say, oh, I'm too old to do that. Okay. I will tell you, I'm 76 years old and I feel like I'm at the beginning of my life with all that I still want to accomplish and what's in front of me that I'm already accomplishing. Because with those 101 wishes, someone says, well, what's going to happen when you finish them all? I said, every time I finish one, I replace it with a new one. So I'll always have 101 wishes.
Love that.
Yep.
People, you hear what he's saying here. Never has any less than 101 wishes. Because when he accomplishes one, he replaces it with another one. And I love that. And admittedly, when you first told me that you were 76, I was blown away. Like, there's no way you're 76. Seriously. Because I think the fact that you are a forever learner, a forever student who wants to explore and look at the possibilities emanates from you in ways that inspire others. What would you say are some of your greatest successes, to the extent that you can share, recognizing client confidentiality? But what are some of the successes that you've experienced working with others that remind you of why you love doing what you're doing?
When my clients tell me, this is especially the ones in career counseling, that based upon the work that we had done together, they are now working in a job that perfectly aligns with who they are. And I say to people, I have a bias in terms of what people earn. I like to hear six-figure jobs from people. Why not, right? And for a number of them, because of where they live, they need to be making six figures.
Yeah.
But it's also that when they talk about what they do, their face lights up. That tells me that they're on the right track. Now, is that the job they're going to do forever? Maybe not, but it's the one that fits right now until they're ready to grow in a different direction. So I would say that is probably one of my greatest successes, is watching them grow. It's like raising children. And when they empty nest you, they say, I'm ready to fly. And that's what I love to see in my clients, that they're ready to fly.
What would you say was one of the biggest learning opportunities for you along the way?
I think one of my biggest learning opportunities was that I'm capable of learning, because I didn't finish my doctorate until I was just turning 60. Okay. And by the way, in the last 2 degrees that I earned, I maintained a 4.0 average.
Wow.
So, I mean, all the way through, no matter what I took, statistics, whatever it was, I figured out a way to just excel in what I did for my own purposes. And I think that was quite an accomplishment to share, because I was working full time when I was doing it.
I would definitely say it's quite an accomplishment to share, one that I can empathize with, because I was also working full time when I got my master's. And for those who are considering doing that, whether it's in your 30s, 40s, 50s, or 60s, it's never too late. It's never, ever, ever too late to
No, it
pursue.
isn't. And, it doesn't have to be a particular degree. It could just be getting a certificate, completing a class in an area that you enjoy and that helps you to grow as an individual. Or, like I said, something that you've never tried and said, okay, I'll try one class in this. And I did that, by the way. I took a class in bookkeeping. Okay. Because when I would take the entrance test, it said, well, you score highest in like banking and bookkeeping. All right, I'll try it. So I took the class. I got all the way to the final, and I was between an A and a B in the class. And at the end of it, I said to the teacher, I said, when on the day of the final, I can either come in to do the final, or I could sing in a performance with the large choir that I was singing with at the time. And you know which one sounds more fun? The choir. So I'm done. And I felt okay about that. It wasn't like I was copping out. I learned enough from that experience to realize this was not something that I wanted to do in life. Yes, it's a great skill to have in balancing your checkbook or, filling out your taxes, but not something that I wanted to do full time. I wouldn't have known that unless I had taken that opportunity. And it wasn't about, well, David, you failed. It was like, David, you learned.
Love that. Yes. Just for those of you who have watched sometime during the first season, second season, or third season, you also know that I don't even believe there's such a thing as FAL. FAL is an acronym for First Attempt in Learning. So thank you
Oh, I
for
like
proving
that.
that. Yes. Yes.
Yes. We never
Didn't make that.
fail. We just gain a new experience. That's all.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Of course, you're working on another book. And
Yes.
so, and you've written others. What would you like to share about what's forthcoming from your book?
So, what happened was 3 years ago, I reconnected with someone I had met years ago in the past. And she reached out and, like many people do on social media, and said, hi, we talked before. Would you like to talk again? So, in our conversations, we came up with something that we both had in common, which was we've been stuck in life. And just like I had explained when I was 29, I was stuck in life. And what did we do to move beyond that? So, in our discussions, we identified 5 keys that people can use to move from stuck to just freedom in their lives. And so we've created actually 2 books. One of them is it's nonfiction, and it's about, the actual steps that you would go through. And then based on that, we sent that out to beta readers, and they said, you actually have 2 books here. You have one that teaches people how to get out of that situation, and then you have another, which is a fictionalized book. So the other one is called Criminal, okay? It has to do about the case against Stuck. And so it's an allegorical fiction where Stuck becomes a character on trial.
Huh. Wow.
And I know, and we put him on trial, and we have who he is, and the other author and I become characters in the book.
Wow.
We have different names, but I am a detective and she's my assistant. And so we go through to find all this evidence to convict him of his crimes against humanity. And there are all kinds of twists and turns, and the witnesses in it, they find out later that they are related and don't even know it. So it's through this trial that they will come to know one another and how they are related. And my friend says, you know what? This would make a great movie. And I said, I agree. We could just see it. And it's like, well, who would play you and who would play me? And, there's the fun of it. I think we've just had fun with this the last 3 years. So the first book is in the hands of beta readers now for their feedback. Then we'll take that information, incorporate it into what we have, send it to an editor, and we're keeping our fingers crossed that sometime late this summer it will be out.
All right,
Yes.
we're going to definitely cross our fingers here too.
And I have to tell you, Barbara Ann, I never saw myself as a writer. Okay. Writing was not my favorite activity. In fact, when I was in college, my freshman year, we all had to take freshman English. The first class that we were in, the teacher said, okay, I want you to write a story about whatever. So I gave it my best shot and I turned it in. And the next class, she puts a paper up on the overhead with a big red F on it saying, here's, don't write a paper. And there was my name. Okay. And
wow.
For a while there, I let her opinion affect me. And then after a while, I realized that's only the opinion of one person.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing that we need to learn, that when someone tells you you can't do something, who knows where that is coming from. Now,
yes,
as a teacher who actually taught writing, I learned that, again, it was only her opinion.
Yeah.
And that, hey, I could write. What would have been wonderful, and this is what I did with my students, is if it wasn't the kind of product that had the quality that I thought it should have, I would have sat down with them and said, let's talk about how you can improve this to make it something of quality. That never happened. You would just turn it in, it would get a grade, and that was it.
Wow.
Yep. So again, it's learning.
Yeah. And there's so many things about that. I mean, whether it is what my coach instructor, shout out to Joe Colantonio, says, which is what people say is about them and what we hear is about us.
That's right.
So, and it's interesting. I have my own separate story about a paper in college that did not go well, that predicted a lot of what's happening today in our country. The professor had some interesting comments about that. Turned out, I wish I could find that person.
I know.
Yeah, I know. You just kind of want to go back and prove to them, but you don't really need to. And that gets to my other point. One of the things my late bestie, Kathy Jaggard, used to say is, what other people think and say about me is none of my business.
That's right.
And then she had a second part to that. She said, but if I hear it from 3 people, I thank them for pointing out the weaknesses that I need to address. And so you have managed to, let me reframe that. All of the different people whose lives you've touched by doing what you're doing, I'm sure are eternally grateful for the impact that you've had in their lives. For those who might want to learn more about how they can work with you,
yes,
to change their lives, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
I think probably the best way for them to reach out and learn more about me is to visit my website. So it is David Petrovay Coaching, all one word, lowercase.com. And it takes them to my website, which explains the work that I do. And in terms of podcasts, I have a number of those. This will be included that are part of that website so that they can listen to it at no cost, to just get a sense of, oh, this is what it would be like to work with David.
And for those who might be a little bit apprehensive, what parting words do you have for them regarding the possibilities that are out there?
Well, I think that's what life is. Life is possibility. And we are here. Imagine this huge smorgasbord table filled with possibility. And you get to sample whatever it is that's on that table. Some of the things you'll like the taste of, other things, not so much. But at least you can say, I tried it.
Awesome. I knew you would be an awesome guest. And I'm so glad you were the first official guest of What the Why, the podcast, otherwise known as season 4. Thank you very, very much for being a guest today on our show. And for those of you who are watching, you really don't want to miss any of the conversations that we have. I mean, Dr. David Petrovay is pretty amazing. So are some of our other upcoming guests. So tune in and learn how they did what they did. I mean, to go from not even wanting to be here anymore to making significant changes in the lives of others is, all I can say is so grateful that you're still here, because so many people benefited because you are. And
Thank you, Barbara Ann.
thank you. In terms of coming up, stay tuned for additional podcasts with other amazing guests that will inspire you and encourage you to overcome whatever fear is holding you back from living into your purpose. In addition to that, the first 3 seasons, I'm happy to say, are also available on our YouTube page and will, as part of what we're calling What the Why, the Rewind, will also be available on our podcast in the coming weeks and months. Thank you for choosing to watch. You have so many podcast options out there. So we really appreciate that you chose ours, and we really hope that you will share. Tell a friend, tell a colleague about what we're doing here and the amazing people that are sharing how they lived into their purpose and overcame whatever fears, challenges, obstacles, real or perceived, were in their path. Thank you again for joining us. And remember, whatever challenges may lay ahead of you, there's a path to finding your purpose and living into it. And we hope that we can be a part of putting you on that journey. Have a great day, everyone. And thank you again, Dr. David Petrovay.
Well, thank you, Barbara Ann.
All right. We'll see you again soon.